screens, meeting virtually. Um, so what I want to talk about today, I think, is something that's going to not only serve you, but also serve your clients. Teresa mentioned she wrote an offer for clients this Saturday. They weren't the first choice of offer, and they're already back out there searching. And I think there's a lot of that going on in the market right now, and it's definitely something to keep in mind when you're working with buyers. Even sellers, sometimes the expectations are so high from a buyer who makes this amazing offer that things can fall apart. And I think one of our jobs is to help our clients kind of work through that setback. Um, but also, this business can be really tough. Working on your own, running your entire business yourself, even if it's within a team, can be stressful. And Lord knows this year has been a lot to handle. And we're coming up on the election day. There is a ton of stress, right? There's a lot that can push us down. And I think, last week was a good reminder for me. I got knocked down, and it really made me think about resilience. And it's one of those words, you hear people talk about like grit and mental toughness and resilience, and these are all kind of buzzwords in the entrepreneur world and the business world. On TED Talks, there's a whole bunch of information out there, but I think it's really good to just get a reminder or kind of refocus on what that means and what we can do to be a little more aware of our ability to bounce back from challenges. These can be huge tragedies, these can be small setbacks, just the stress of the world that can really knock us down. Is anybody feeling like at some point this year they were in that position where they needed to bounce back, where you felt like something had knocked you off track or kind of crushed you? I think even more so this year, we're experiencing that. And I think in order to maintain a good, steady flow of business, in order to have a strong momentum in your business, one of the important things is to be able to bounce back from setbacks, to have resilience yourself and also for your clients. So I'm just going to share some bits of information that I've gleaned over the last week, and just from my experience in the business. Anytime that I feel a little out of control and more emotional than anything else, the first thing I do is start looking for very logical information about what I'm going through and how I can get out of it. So that's kind of what I did. Last week we had it was dog health problems. People, like, these aren't children or people who are going to turn into the president of the United States, like, just dogs. But it was a real emotional roller coaster and a few other things going on. And after a year that's been very stressful, at a very peak time of stress in the year, it just crushed me. And it took me about 5 days to come back. I didn't completely stop working. I didn't I got out of bed, I functioned as an adult, but I was not as high functioning as I usually am. And so, anybody can get knocked off track by even something that might be considered in the scheme of life small, because there's so many more factors going on, especially right now. So first, I would say whatever has knocked you off track or has in the past, there's no shame in that. It's really a matter of perspective. And if it's something that has really affected you, it's really affected you. And that's just that. Building your mental toughness is going to help you avoid that happening over time. But today we're going to talk about how you can bounce back and how you can help your clients bounce back from those setbacks, from getting knocked off track, from whatever things happen, or even just getting worn out from the stress of everything going on in the world. So I looked at several definitions of resilience, and it's interesting. There are several different out there, but essentially, resilience is the ability to get knocked down by life and bounce back stronger than ever. That was my favorite definition. So not just to come back, but to come back stronger. anything that you come across in life that really pushes you is an opportunity to grow and become better. So I loved that definition. Rising from the ashes, having, when it comes to objects, resilience is the ability to spring back into shape or elasticity. And I thought that was fascinating. That ability to adapt and be flexible can be difficult, especially for people that have gotten set in their ways. It's a good reminder as a new agent, especially that it's good to remember that you will be most successful if you can be flexible. Was anybody in the meeting this morning with the MLS changes that have happened? So that stuff happens all the time. So be ready. Just small things like a change in the system can really be a setback. And the more flexible you can be, the more resilient you can be, the faster you can bounce back, and stronger and more informed than you were before. So it applies in a lot of different ways. Now, there's a ton of information out there about what are the traits of people who are resilient. And the research out there is that it's not like you are a resilient person or you're not. This isn't a trait that people are born with and then you either have it or you don't. It's something that you can develop. So the good news is everybody has this ability. It is not specific to certain people, certain personalities. Everybody can develop resilience, and it's more a matter of how you develop that yourself. It's a learned skill. It's a kind of a natural reaction that you develop. So it's an opportunity that everybody has, which for me is nice to hear. It's not just certain people that have this ability. There may be people out there who are really good at it, and it probably means they've faced some great adversities and they've figured out how to get themselves back stronger than ever, quicker, more effectively, more efficiently. So some of the traits that people possess who are really resilient are able to, they believe in their ability to cope. They have a capacity to make realistic plans, which I thought was fascinating from a planning standpoint and setting goals. I think that's great. Having the ability to carry out those plans, effectively managing your feelings and impulses. Oh my gosh, you guys, last week I was like, I'm just never leaving the couch. I just don't even know what to do with myself. Like, okay, Amanda, let's get this in check here. What's really happening in the world? What is my impulse to just curl up on the couch and go nowhere? Yeah, that's not helping. What can we do instead? Having good communication skills has come up time and again in the things that I've read and watched. And I thought that was really interesting because it's not the first thing I would think of when I think of resilience, but the ability to effectively communicate how you're feeling, what plans you need to make to kind of pull yourself out of this. That interpersonal piece is important. And even though we can't necessarily be together in a big group, being able to lean on people and communicate with them, even just your partner, your family, this is what I'm feeling right now, kind of pulling on your immediate community. It's a really interesting piece that I didn't think of when I first thought of resilience. Having the ability to problem solve and having confidence in your strengths and abilities. So has anybody ever been in a position where you get knocked down and then you just go down this spiral of like, and I'm not good at this, and this is terrible, and I can't even do that, and how do I even function? Like, has anybody been there? Am I the only one? So this can happen, especially in this business, because it's so emotional, because there will be times when you will have a client, a co-broke, a lender lash out at you and it feels very personal, and it's not, and it shouldn't be. But that stuff happens. And so having the confidence in your strengths and abilities, having that realistic point of view, that positive view of yourself is really important. So that's a little bit of mental toughness to avoid getting in this position, but it's also something that you may rely on to bounce back. Um, these can be small setbacks. A rough conversation with a co-broke can throw you off course. How can you bounce back from that? Refocus, have a plan, think about, your strengths and abilities. So I watched several TED Talks, and there are some interesting ones out there. I will say they're not all great. But one that I found to be really interesting was from a woman who is a psychologist, studies resilience, had when her town had been affected by a natural disaster, she started helping people and was utilizing her psychological research to help people. And she thought she was doing a great job of that. And then she herself experienced a real tragedy. Her daughter died in a car accident. She was 12 years old. It was sudden, unexpected. And then she really realized what she felt like she needed or not didn't need to hear when she was in that position. And so it was an interesting perspective, I thought. And she really pulled out three key things that encompass a lot of the other information I've come across. And I have some other detail kind of related to getting stuck in the cycle of an emotion that I want to talk about too, but I want to touch on her three recommendations of how to bounce back. The first one is to acknowledge and accept that bad stuff happens. One of the TED Talks that I watched is just literally called Shit Happens. So bad stuff happens, right? Like it's part of life. How extreme or how emotional those things are, there's good and bad things every day. So just acknowledging and accepting that that's just going to happen, to some extent giving up a little bit of that control or struggle to make everything perfect that we're really good at, especially now with social media, right? Like everything we post is like, life is perfect, everything's great, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, look at me, I don't ever have any struggles. It makes us feel like that's how life should be, and it's not true. Bad stuff happens. The second thing she learned from her experience is to focus on the good. And I've talked about this before, and it's something that I try to practice daily and as part of my planning, is just to think about the things I'm grateful for. And she mentioned a study where people were asked to come up with 3 things they were grateful for every day for a 30-day period. And scientists could see mapping in the brain that actually helped them to handle stress. And not only handle stress, but to better perform. And so there's real research behind the benefits of gratitude. So just something as simple as writing down 3 things you're grateful for. Waking up and the first thing you think about is what's something I'm grateful for. Before you go to bed, what's one thing? What's 3 things? Having that habit in place, it's a very small thing to do, right? These are small steps consistently done that build up to something greater. And so that I thought was a really good reminder, right? Like it's easy to get caught in what's wrong and all the things that relate to that make it terrible. And then, oh, there's this other bad thing. And has anybody fallen down that hole recently, especially right now? Yeah, it's hard. And so, put down Facebook. Don't look at the news articles that are begging for your attention with threats and stress and fear, and focus on what's good, even if it's something small. I'm wearing my favorite shirt today. I get to eat tacos for dinner. Awesome. I still have, a great family. I love where I live. I've got a new client. Whatever it is, little things. It sounds silly. Trust me, even just taking the time to really thoughtfully focus on those things and acknowledge them can make a massive difference, especially when it feels like everything is a mess. If you're in the middle of trying to get things together to get your business going, and it's like, God, I just cannot get momentum. I can't get anybody to sign buyer agency with me. I can't get anybody to follow up after I call them. I can't get anybody to go look at a house. What the heck? Everything's not working. Well, yeah, but have you made some progress on your offer writing? Have you talked to more people in the last week or attempted to than you did the week before? It's those little things that you have to consider victories. They don't have to be major. And when it comes down to it, comparison is the thief of joy. Do not compare. It's it is so natural for us to look for benchmarks, right? Like, I'm new, I've been in it this many months. How many transactions should I have closed? How many buyers should I be working with right now? Oh, the monthly numbers come out and I'm seeing the top 10 in our office. I need to be doing that kind of business. How am I not doing that kind of business yet? Don't do it. Don't do it. It's so tempting. It's so tempting. And, I'm a competitive person, so I do look at that stuff, but I've got to keep a realistic perspective that everybody's going through something different. Everybody has different goals. Everybody has, different challenges and awesome things that just fall in their lap, and you can't control all that. Like, don't waste your time. Focus on what you are doing. Focus on your victories. Focus on your progress and your momentum. And don't worry about anybody else, because I can tell you the times that I am most successful, the times when I have the most business, the times I'm happiest with what I'm doing in my business is when I'm not paying attention to what everybody else is doing. Every time. Every time I fall down a spiral, every time I fall off course and it just gets harder and harder, it's when I'm comparing myself to everybody else. Don't do it. Don't do it. And you will. You'll start to do it. Just catch yourself and focus on the good. Set that aside. The third thing she talked about that I thought was such a good question, and I have on occasion gotten into the habit of asking myself this question, especially when I find myself scrolling mindlessly on my phone. Has anybody gotten into that where you're just sort of like feverishly like poking all your apps and you're looking and then all of a sudden you're back in the Facebook and I was just here and then I'll check my email one more time. And it's just this like frenzy of like searching for something and you don't know what it is. Um, Totally natural. That stuff is designed to make us respond like lab rats. It is. Um, but I loved this question. And it's something you can ask yourself when you're doing that and when you're working through anything, any setback, work or otherwise, is this helping me or is this hurting me? So what I'm doing right now, is this helping me or is this hurting me? Am I trying to listen to this class and also do something else at the same time? And I'm not doing either one efficiently. Is this helping me or is this hurting me? Am I going to get off this call and go, oh man, I really wish I had listened to the rest of that. It sounded like it was good. Or I really wish I'd focus more on whatever I'm doing because I'm doing it poorly. I'm getting up later because I am kind of unmotivated this morning and now I'm behind on my work, but I was trying to help myself by getting a little more sleep, but I should have helped myself by going to bed earlier last night. What am I doing right now? Is it helping or hurting me? If it's majority helping you, great. If it's majority hurting you, what can you do to change it? Or just stop doing it. And that's what kind of helped me reset. I had a setback. I immediately stopped doing yoga and meditation in the morning because I didn't want to get out of bed. And that hurt me. I felt like crap. And then I couldn't get off the couch and wasn't really getting anything done. So then I was just sitting there feeling like a lazy sloth who wasn't doing anything. Okay, that's hurting me. I need to stop that. So at any point, if you're in the middle of that cycle, if you feel like you're stuck in an emotion, stop yourself and ask, is what I'm doing right now helping me or hurting me? And you can also do that with your clients. What are we doing right now? Are we helping or hurting our clients? Is our client doing something that's helping or hurting the situation? There's gonna be setbacks throughout this home purchase or home sell process, even to a successful closing. There's always bumps in the road. It's good to warn them that that could happen, right? We're acknowledging that bad stuff happens. It's not gonna be a perfectly smooth, beautifully newly paved road to closing. There's going to be challenges, and that's why you have an expert to help you through that stuff. So acknowledge it's going to happen. Let's focus on what we can control. Let's focus on the good here. Okay, so we couldn't get our offer accepted. Let's step back and look at what the market's doing. How can we better set ourselves up for success next time? You know, if the thing you keep doing isn't working, it's hurting you. So what can we do to help? How do we change our approach? So I think it very much applies to how we can best serve our clients as well. And let's be honest, best serving our clients is great for us too, right? If we can't serve our clients well, that hurts and it eventually wears down on us. It also doesn't help our business. So I think that was a really good point to those three were really the strongest and easiest to remember three things. You know, acknowledge bad stuff's going to happen, focus on the good, remember to be grateful, and ask yourself, is this helping or hurting me? And either stop it, change it, do something else, make a plan, get yourself out of it. Now, another thing that I was reading about, I came across a podcast about burnout, and I felt like it was related to this idea of resilience, right? So if what happens if you get stuck in that falling off track, getting crushed by life, it eventually burns you out, right? If you just cannot get yourself out of that cycle through some resilience, you're gonna feel burned out. And I found it so interesting because I think in this business, it's easy to burn yourself out, right? Like it's easy to get caught up in doing all of the things and wanting to do all of the business and just riding that wave. And then all of a sudden you realize like you've blown off family things, you haven't gotten the sleep you need, you stopped exercising, whatever it is, it's really easy to get burned out. But I also found it interesting that we can really resist that burnout for a while. And I don't know if you've experienced this necessarily in real estate, but have you in other jobs where you felt like, I don't really feel like I'm burned out. I think it's fine. I'm just stressed, whatever. And then all of a sudden, like something small throws you off, and you're like, oh my God, my world is crumbling because I'm so burned out and I have been for a while and I just haven't acknowledged it. So that's kind of where I was last week. It's been a busy year and I've really ignored the burnout factor. I told myself I wasn't going to burn myself out this year. I've done it the last 2 years. I thought I was good. And then something threw me off. And then it was like, oh, yeah, I'm totally burned out. I just wasn't acknowledging it. And the thing I thought was interesting from this podcast in talking about burnout, it's a couple of sisters. They wrote the book is called Burnout. They're twin sisters. They both have their doctorate. One's a conductor and one is a sex psychologist. And they were really interested in understanding how people get out of burnout and like what the cause of burnout is. And for them, it was getting stuck in the tunnel of one emotion or getting stuck in the cycle of one emotion and just never being able to get out of it. And I think that's part of what pulls us away from bouncing back. So, you know, you go into that tunnel, there's a light at the end, but if you can't get to that point, then you're just feeling that all the time. It just doesn't go away. And it's really hard to bounce back when you're in that position. So I really loved that visual. I thought that was really helpful. And I thought it was a good way to think about, you know, not only how we're feeling working through this year, working through the challenges of starting your business, working through the challenge of a transaction, but also like where our clients might be in the middle of all this. You know, we're pushing them through. Here's step number 2, here's step number 3, let's keep going. And they're still feeling the emotions of, you know, whatever threw them off. You know, the feedback from a showing or the stress of an inspection, and helping them understand and helping ourselves understand that we may be stuck in that tunnel and figuring out what we can do to get out of it, I think is really important. And it was interesting the things that they think are the most effective and have, you know, scientific backing. They're really simple things. It's things like like being able to laugh, like really laugh, not like socially polite laugh, but like really like embarrassingly loud, weird body movements laugh. Simple thing, so if you're in a tough spot, like call your best friend and have a good laugh about something. Um, Physical contact, so even just a hug, which is real hard to pull off right now, but if you've got a significant other or family members, that's a good one. Um, I used to hug my clients, I can't really right now. Um, but something small like that. Um, they were physical activity, whether that's just stretching or going for a walk. So if you're feeling at your maximum, that really time and again comes up in all kinds of stress management, productivity recommendations, right? It could be something small. It doesn't have to be 2 hours with a trainer at the gym, it can be roll out of bed, do a yoga video for 10 minutes. It could be go for a walk in between things. Um, it doesn't have to be huge. Having a creative outlet was another one, which I thought was the way it was presented, I loved. So it's not just, get an adult coloring book. Like, that's the cool thing to do right now, right? It's also, can you do a little creative thinking about something? Um, One of the authors said she had never really gotten the benefit of physical activity, but when she paired running on an elliptical with imagining herself as Godzilla, like tromping through and crushing all the things that were stressing her out, then it clicked. Then it worked. Then she snapped out of the cycle. So I thought that was kind of a fun thing to think about is like, you can just be creative. Um, and if you have kids, what a perfect opportunity to just have some quality time with them and also potentially have something that's going to help you bounce back. So those were the main ones that really stood out to me. I'm in the middle of the book, so I would say it's worth reading. Um, but I haven't gotten through the whole thing yet. Usually I don't recommend a book until I've read the whole thing, but it's called Burnout. And that may be a good one to reference. For me, and one of the things that did come up in some of the videos I watched was, for those of us who like to be in control and who are planners, having a plan is one way to kind of pull yourself out or bounce back. So if that's your jam, just making a plan, something small. I'm going to listen to this podcast today. That's my little step forward. I'm going to get this book. I'm going to take the time to go for a walk today for just 5 minutes. When it comes back to it, and I'm sure you're seeing this come up time and again as we talk, is whenever it comes to progress, whenever it comes to building momentum, pulling yourself out of something, leaning towards something, getting that momentum for your business, or just helping yourself get in the right mindset, it's all about those little steps. It's all about just one foot in front of the other, being consistent, being okay with them, those small steps. You don't have to make these massive leaps. Nobody does, right? Like, it looks like it on social media. It looks like it, even with our production of our really, agents in the office who are doing really well this year, it just looks like they came out of nowhere. Like they've done nothing and then all of a sudden they're on the moon, right? It's not true. You just don't see the behind the scenes. Very few people are out there going, okay, so today I'm going to do these 3 boring things again. And then I have this 5 minute walk and then I check my goals. And none of that's like entertaining and glamorous, right? Like, I do my best to talk about that stuff. But really, at the end of the day, nobody wants to hear about that stuff, right? Like, you don't watch the rehearsals and the performance. You just go to the performance, right? Because you want to see the results of all the hard work. And that's what we see all the time, is just the results. We don't see all the stuff that got to that point. And the stuff that gets to that point is the most important stuff. It really is. So keeping in mind that those little steps, that little bit of progress, those small plans, building those habits, that kind of stuff is what's going to help you to first build mental toughness so that you don't get set back as easily. And two, it'll help you bounce back when you do get thrown off course. And I think an important thing to remember when those things happen is don't waste your time giving yourself a hard time. Like, who cares if it's a small thing? Who cares if somebody else's problem is bigger in the grand scheme than yours? At the end of the day, it's your experience. It's your translation of what's happening. It's your reaction to what's happening, and that's real. So don't waste your time giving yourself a hard time about whether, you know, writing an offer is stressing you out to the point of frozen, or an offer not getting accepted makes you more upset than your client. Just figure out how to build some resilience to that, right? Because if you don't, it's just going to keep happening. You're either going to get so burned out from it that you don't want to experience it anymore, or you're going to get stuck in that cycle. Either way, burnout, or you figure out how to bounce back. You come back stronger. You can handle the next challenge because stuff's going to happen, right? So that's essentially what I wanted to talk about today. I am super curious about your thoughts on this. And if anybody has found things that work for them, or has read or seen or heard anything else about this, I'm really interested in your perspective and experiences. So turn on your mics, everybody. This is a safe place. No judgment.
I'll go ahead and give an experience. Recently, actually, I was introduced to someone through a friend of a friend, and there was I think there was some miscommunication as to the point of our meeting, but we got together, had some lunch, and my friend had told me that she was interested in real estate. But she was also new to town, so she was also looking for a friend. So I was like, perfect, we'll meet up, we'll get lunch, and we talked kind of about each other's lives, family, and then we got into real estate a little bit, whatever. And so I thought we had a really great conversation. I followed up with her maybe a few weeks later because she was traveling, whatnot, and she actually was like, I felt like our conversation was a little bit more focused on real estate, and that wasn't what I came into the conversation for. And so it was just very much a miscommunication. She's like, good luck with your endeavors, but if I were to have gone on a real estate appointment, I would have brought my husband, well, whatever. So she was very honest and nice about it, but that was a day where I was really focused on lead generating. And I just felt kind of like beat down a little bit because I'm like, how did I misread that? How, I felt bad, but I also felt discouraged. And I kind of went through that whole, all those emotions of like, shoot, like, I'm not cut out for this, whatever. So I really had to pull myself out of that. And kind of just say, okay, that's one person out of so many people in the world. So that was just one experience that I'm sure other people have had before, or maybe not. But you just kind of have to pull yourself out of that headspace of kind of feeling beat down a little bit, and discouraged, and just say, okay, I just got to keep going, keep doing what I'm meant to do, and learn from that. So
that's a great example. So after that, Catherine, did you then like go jump into your lead generation? Did you give yourself a break? What'd you do?
yeah, I just kind of like processed it and thought, okay, what's my next step, or how can I learn from this? I talked to my team leader, kind of talked her through it, and was like, I just like feel a little bit like just weird. You just feel weird. So yeah, I kind of just stepped away for a little bit and then got right back into it because, it is one person, and not everyone's going to take to your approach, or not everyone's going to want to work with you, and not everyone's going to want to, sit down and have a conversation like that or whatever, but I told the person who told me this, I said, I appreciate your feedback. I honestly, like, this is a learning opportunity for me. I respect, everything you said. And I hope that, we can still, be acquaintances, it wasn't a bad conversation, but it was just very unsettling in a way, to think that I came off a certain way that I didn't feel like I came off. So it's just interesting to see someone else's perspective.
Yeah, and you said something really key there was this is a learning opportunity,
Mhm,
right? And I mean, it's especially abundant when you're new that
mhm.
nearly everything is a great learning opportunity, right?
Right.
And that mistakes are going to happen. But I
Mhm,
can tell you from experience that no matter how long you've been in this business, mistakes are going to happen, misunderstandings are going to happen, and it really truly is how you handle that, right?
mhm,
It's okay to feel it as a blow, right? I
mhm.
had I had somebody the other day who called me and my voicemail was all messed up, and he'd called me over a week ago and then it popped up and I was like, "Oh no." So I call him and he kind of blew me off, He was like, "Yeah, that was like over a week ago." And I'm like, "I'm really, voicemail problems, just want to make sure you're taken care of." But then I like couldn't get over it for the rest of the day. I was like, "Dude, I totally screwed up. This guy thinks
Mhm.
I'm an idiot. What the heck?"
Yeah.
But yes, there are lots of other people in the world, in the area, who need a real estate agent, and that's the good to focus on. And I told my husband about this, and he's like, "Sounds like a jerk." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right." But like, he was moving from Chicago. Maybe it would have been a good. He's like, "Who cares? It sounds like a jerk." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. I have to focus on the fact that I have other really nice clients, and there are other
Exactly.
nice people out there." Yeah,
Yeah.
and this person didn't sound like a jerk, but yeah, maybe not a client and maybe somewhere down
Yeah.
the road. Yeah, and I
Right.
bet the way you responded to that situation really shows her your character. And even though it
Yeah.
feels weird now, like maybe at some point, that'll come back around.
Yeah,
So,
I even said, maybe because I didn't want like an awkward lull in the conversation. Maybe I just naturally fell back to talking about real estate, or it was truthfully a misunderstanding of what I was communicated by your friend. So it
mhm.
all was fine at the end of the day. But when you don't see the meeting as in the way that they saw the meeting play out, you're like, wait, what? We talked about your brother in California for like 20 minutes and like I don't- you know what I mean? So it was just definitely a good learning experience. But it's all temporary too. Those feelings of like defeat or um, just feeling let down or whatever it is, it's all temporary. So also I try to remember that in certain situations too.
Yeah. And that, your feelings towards something are in your control. So
Hmm.
it can be very shortly temporary if
Hmm.
you've built that ability to bounce back. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's a great example. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing.
Yeah, of course.
Anyone else have some thoughts or insight experiences they've had?
I have one.
Yeah.
Hello. Sorry, I've been on off video because I am just getting ready for the day. But I had my first open house this weekend, and I couldn't get anybody to even talk to me. They were like terrified of me. They were like, "Oh, scary realtor, like gonna try to sell me stuff." And I was like, "Well, that's kind of the point." But yeah, I couldn't get anybody to like even sit still for 5 minutes to have a conversation. And I did it both Saturday and Sunday, and it was the same experience both days. And it was just kind of like, whoa, like this is I just kind of thought I would have one really good interaction, and it left me feeling like I don't know how to talk to people and people don't want to talk to me. So I had to kind of just do like a little bit of a recheck and be like, that was one weekend, it was I mean, two open houses, but just whatever, you need to do it again, and just not panic like that. Cause there's nothing you can do about those. They're over and done. So next time, just think about, I've realized like I should have brought like a radio to kind of put people at ease instead of just like walking around like a silent home. I don't know. It was a little eye opening for me. I didn't realize people were so like nervous around real estate agents. Like they were like really like, don't, no, 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 we're fine. I was like, okay, just here for you. I literally didn't even know you were coming. So I'm not here to attack you. You know what I mean? Mm.
Yeah, that's a great example. And Reagan, there's definitely going to be times when you like walk into an open house and you're like, I'm ready to meet all the people, make all
Rock
the
and roll.
contacts. It's gonna be great. I got my favorite outfit on. It's gonna be awesome. And then it's just like a total flop.
Yeah.
um, and some of it is comfort and approach. Some of it's the house itself and who is attracted to it. There's so many factors. But I
felt,
think, you know, you're all, yeah, go ahead.
or I felt like it was like a very blue collar place. It like reminded me of my hometown because I'm from Upper Michigan, like a place where people like, you don't tell me, I tell you kind of deal. You know what I mean? And I feel like it was kind of the people who were like, we'll let you know when we want your help. And I was like, okay, like just stand here. Like that's what they want. So I don't know. Like there's no way to sell to those people. So I don't know why I got so like bummed about it. Cause like they're going to want to do what they want to do at the end of the day. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you know, like you said, you already have started coming up with things you could potentially do, right? Like having music playing to soften the atmosphere a little bit. Great idea. You know, recognizing that the area may attract a certain kind of personality. That's a great learning experience. So, yeah, I think it's good to see it as a jumping off point rather than a total fail, right? Like, okay, what can I do from here? And rather than saying, oh, I don't do open houses anymore, they don't work. You know, you're already thinking about what can I do better next time? What can I do to change, you know, the interaction or the atmosphere? And that's great. And sometimes like just bad stuff happens, right? Sometimes you just have a bad open. And sometimes it can really catch you off guard. So being able to kind of take what you can from it, I think is really the best that you can do. Yeah, and by the way, if you are looking for like tips on open houses, asking to shadow agents on their opens can be a really good way to do that. I was just talking to Janine the other day and she's like, I always encourage people to follow me on open houses. I haven't done any opens this year. It's one of the things I kind of cut off with COVID, but it's
Sorry.
it's a way that you can kind of see how other agents approach people. And that can be really insightful too. And then you really can stand in the corner and just observe.
I think
Yeah.
there's an open house seminar or like a training in November coming up.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
too.
that's
So,
exciting.
yeah, so that'll be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great example though, Reagan. Super common, right? Like these are things that I think everybody has experienced or you will. And feels bigger, especially when you first start, because you just haven't built up that resilience muscle for some of these experiences. But you know, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, definitely. Anybody else have an example or some thoughts on this? Thanks for sharing, Reagan.
No, I was going to say that I kind of learned over the years that you're entitled to a couple or more blue days, and they just happen, and there's nothing you can do about them, and you just know that they won't last. But sometimes you forget that, and you think, why am I just so, out of sorts? So that's one thing. The other thing is I use music a lot to kind of modulate my moods. So I have all sorts of different music, and depending on how I feel, energetic or bummed out or need to chill, I put on different kinds of music, and that seems to help.
Do you have some recommendations?
Oh, just yeah, I could make you a list.
So I'm curious, Alex, when you listen to this music, do you like move around a little bit? Is it like a creative expression experience, or is it more just listening to it?
It could be both. If like I have music to work out in the yard with, and I have music that I can read a book by, or music that I want to get my wife more romantic or whatever. So that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm creating like all these Spotify lists. You can follow me on Spotify.
Nice. Awesome. Take note, everybody. Maybe we should start a list for launch, like a bounce back, a lift off list. That would be good. Yeah, I think a part of that too, that is kind of a coping mechanism I've figured out is if I get to the point of that like constant chatter, that like crappy voice in your head that's like, you don't even know how to talk to people, and how are you ever going to get any business, and you don't even know what you're doing, you might as well just not get off the couch, like that voice. Does anybody ever get that? Is just listening to music sometimes will drown that out, and help me focus on what I'm doing. So that like running commentary sometimes just needs like alternate noise, especially if it's like good stuff that like gets in your soul, whatever that is. That can really help. That's kind of that creative outlet, right? It kind of pulls on the creative side of your brain. And I think that's a great point. Simple stuff, right? Like this isn't like 5 easy payments of $99.99. This is like really basic small things you can do that don't cost you money in most cases. And this is the real self-care, people. This is, you don't need to get a facial and pay for all this fancy equipment and all this stuff. Like you can do very simple things to kind of armor yourself from the world and all the things that happen, but also in this business. And you can provide some of this kind of information to your clients too. This is part of being their guide and their coach through this experience. It's emotional, right? Like it's not just money for a lot of people. So being able to set them up for success on the heart side of things too, is important, and they will be forever grateful. And if you don't consider that, that's usually when surprises happen. That's usually when people are caught off guard. That's typically when they get upset with you, or the experience goes south really fast. So if you can kind of help them anticipate bad stuff's going to happen, how can we prepare you for it? How are we going to bounce back? We're going to focus on the positive. We're going to make a plan. We're going to focus on what we can control. We're going to remind ourselves like how we're behaving right now, what we're doing right now. Is this helping or hurting us in the situation? How can we move forward? If you can be, we're kind of life coaches, you guys. We help people through some really big decisions. So if you can pull from things like this, not only for yourself, but to better serve your clients, they will think you are a superstar. They will love you for life. Anybody else have any last minute thoughts? Was this helpful? Yeah? Okay. Sometimes I come up with these things and I'm like, this is gonna be great. And then I don't know, I see a bunch of tiny faces and black screens and I'm like, anybody? Is this good? Is it helpful?
No, it's good.
All right, cool.
Can I just
Awesome.
say that I just
Yeah.
wanted to invite everyone. Andy and I are going over the offer to purchase today at 3:30. So I posted it on the launch Facebook page, and I know it's kind of last minute, but if anyone wants to join us, let me know.
Awesome. I love it. Build those skills, that confidence in your abilities. That's great, Celia. 3:30 today at the office with
Yeah,
Andy
right.
Stillman. Cool. And Andy is, if you don't know him, he's on Natasha Duvall's team. He's an independent agent for a long time, a wealth of knowledge, and he is one of the 2 agents that's on the helpline for the launch program. So if you haven't had a chance to meet him, it would even be worth stopping in if you can. Everybody's here wearing masks, and I think they're going to be out at the library tables right inside the entrance. But that's a great opportunity. Thank you for mentioning that. If you haven't worked on your offer to purchase, it's only 11:30. You got some time. You can bring one with you. Did he give you a certain house to write on, Celia, or are you just kind of going over the basics?
I think we're just kind of going over the basics, but
Okay.
that's a good idea. I could bring that up.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. That's great. I'm so glad you mentioned that. Cool. Well, I highly encourage you to continue to share things like that. I highly encourage you to lean on each other. That community piece is so important, even though it's a little challenged right now. Working through some things, figuring out what works for you to build that resilience, figuring out how you can best serve your clients through these sorts of things. A lot of that comes from just talking to each other. Whether it's other people in the launch program or other agents in the office, we're all open books and happy to chat. So, take advantage of that great culture that we have here, and utilize the community to help you work through some of that stuff we're all here for it. So reminder, I still do accountability calls. It's a 20-minute check-in about your goals, where you're at with things. If we need to walk through a challenge that has set you back, that's what I'm here for. So text me to set up an appointment. We'll schedule it for about 20 minutes on the phone. And it's just a good chance to reset and kind of work through something. If you have specific questions to contracts or something within a transaction that needs, answers, go to the helpline. And even better, be proactive and make sure that you've taken the time to practice an offer, walk through it with Andy, get those general questions answered before they become, I need this answer right this moment. And if you do need an answer right this moment, let them know. This is a 911, this is an SOS. Text them, I need immediate response. So that's kind of where you can go with those questions. And of course, you can always check the Facebook group for our office or for launch. If you search by whatever word, you're very likely to come across a conversation or recommendations from someone who had that question before you too. So those are some good resources for you. Well, thanks everybody for coming. I really, really appreciate your interacting and sharing and continuing to come to these classes, especially when you're participating. That's the best. I can't wait till we can do these in person, but it looks like it's going to be a while. So we will continue to do these virtually. And like I said, you can set up a call with me for one-on-one help and continue to lean on each other. Jesse, I'll send you the helpline number. And yeah, thanks again. You guys have a great week. Remember, bad stuff's going to happen. It's about how you handle it and how you bounce back stronger. All right, take care.